la bestialidad imperialista. Bestialidad que no tiene una frontera determinada ni pertenece a un país determinado. Bestias fueron las hordas hitleristas, como bestias son los norteamericanos hoy, como bestias son los paracaidistas belgas, como bestias fueron los imperialistas franceses en Argelia. Porque es la naturaleza del imperialismo la que bestializa a los hombres, la que la convierte en fieras sedientas de sangre que están dispuestas a degollar, a asesinar, a destruir hasta la última imagen de un revolucionario, de un partidario de un régimen que haya caído bajo su bota o que luche por su libertad. Y la estatua que recuerda a Lumumba, hoy destruida pero mañana reconstruida, nos recuerda también en la historia trágica de ese mártir de la revolución del mundo, que no se puede confiar en el imperialismo, pero ni tantito así, nada.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 19, Unmasking Imperialism, Exposing Imperialist Propaganda in Mainstream Media. Today, we are in defense of China's Communist Party, celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party of China. In my opinion, one of the most politically advanced, stable, and developed communist parties and political parties in the world in general. And joining me today are two good comrades who have some really great work in solidarity with not only with China, but with all working class people around the world. Excellent content. We have comrade Carl Zha, who is the host of the Silk and Steel podcast, which focuses on China and surrounding regions, history, culture, and politics. Please subscribe to his channel. The link is in the description. His podcast is amazing. The quality of his content is so good and authentic and has some really great information about China and world events. How's it going, Carl?
Hey, how are you? Thank you for inviting me.
No problem, Carl. Where are you based in again? Because I know where you are right now. It's super early.
Yeah, I'm in Bali. So Bali is actually the same time zone as Beijing times. It's about 7 o'clock right now in the morning.
It's early as hell where you are, but thank you so much, man. I know in the morning, if I haven't had my coffee, I'm all cranky and groggy. So I really appreciate you joining. I'm based in LA, and also joining us is a good friend of mine, a good comrade, Dust James, Marxist-Leninist trucker, host of Anti-Imperialist America and Working Class Revolt. He is also a member of the Center for Political Innovation. Shout out to the CPI. Shout out to Caleb Maupin. What's up, Dust? How's it going, brother?
Hey, how's it going, y'all, man? It's an honor to be on the same screen with y'all, and it is a lovely, warm day down here in rural North Carolina.
That's what's up, comrade. Good to hear from you. Everybody, please subscribe to Dust. He has also great content on his channel. What I like about both of these guys' content on their YouTube channel is that it's optimistic. It's about constructive socialism. It's not pessimistic. It's not immature. It's not ultra leftism that unfortunately we see a lot of on YouTube. It's very progressive and constructive oriented content, especially about China, as we're going to be getting into today. I think maybe we can start off with talking about the 100th anniversary. Obviously, July 1st, 1921, the Communist Party of China was founded in Shanghai, China. Today continues to be the leading party in the People's Republic of China. The CPC has done so many amazing things to lift millions of people out of poverty. But I was hoping that maybe Comrade Carl could give us a brief history of the Communist Party of China, because in a lot of the mainstream media coverage about the CPC's 100th anniversary, no historical context, no information about how many improvements have been made in China because of this party. Why don't you give us a brief rundown of what this party has been through, because it's been quite a lot.
I'll try to be brief. So this happened in the aftermath of the World War I, especially after the 1919, the Versailles Peace Treaty. So China was a participant in World War One. It enters the war on the Allied side. China actually sent 250,000 Chinese labor corps to work on the Western Front. A lot of the Chinese workers, they work in the very dangerous task of cleaning the battlefield, carry out the wounded, cleaning tanks, working the factories. They were actually the largest non-European presence during World War One. And also in the Tsarist Russia, China sent another 200,000 workers to work there. Then, as we know, October Revolution happened in Russia, and about the 200,000 Chinese workers were actually trapped in Russia during this Russian Civil War, and many of them, I think the estimate ranging from 40 to 50,000 Chinese workers actually joined the Red Army during the October Revolution. And some of them made their way back to China and bring the ideas of the revolution back. At the same time, during the 1919 Versailles Peace Conference, China's interest was basically betrayed, because one of the reasons for China to enter the war on the Allied side is China wanted to recover the German colony of Qingdao. So Germany had carved out its own colony in China. Many people may have heard of Qingdao beer. So that's how it came from, because the Germans brought beer to Qingdao, their colony. But at the end of World War I, China wanted that piece of land back. And initially, Ally agreed that will be the price for China's entry into the war. But after the war, China then find out that was not to be. United States actually had a secret agreement with Imperial Japan to hand over the German colony of Qingdao, which sits on the Chinese province of Shandong, to Japan. And a lot of Chinese students were outraged. And this sparked the May 4th movement. It's an anti-imperialist movement. And many radical Chinese youth, then they look to an alternative model to the Western liberal democracy model. It just so happened this is right after the October Revolution. So people look to Soviet Russia as a possible alternative. And many communists cell were formed at the time, many study groups. And then in 1921, the commie intern representative of the Dutch communist Henk Sneevliet Marin, he was sent by commie intern into China, and he urged the various communist cells in China to get together for a national meeting in June 1921. Sneevliet, by the way, he was later executed by Nazi in 1942 for leading the underground Dutch resistance. The various delegates then decided to hold the first National Congress of Communist Party of China to take place in the French concession in Shanghai, because during that time, the various colonial power carved out their own enclaves in China, and French concession in Shanghai was one of them. The advantage of that was that the Chinese warlords' rule did not extend to these foreign concessions. So they thought, they can go ahead and safely have that meeting, but that was not to be, because the French police got wind of it. And then just after one day, the French police came knocking on the door, but fortunately the communists got they got tipped off, so they left Shanghai and they went to a small city a little bit south of Shanghai, Jiaxing. They went to Jiaxing is famous for its South Lake, and there's a lot of tourist boats. So they hired out a tourist boat. And that's where they finished up their meeting. This happened in end of July, but by 1940, the the two remaining two original founding member, one is Mao and one is Dong Bibu. They were in Yan'an. They couldn't remember the exact date of their meeting, so they all remember it's July. So then Mao decided, let's just make July 1st the anniversary date of the founding of the China's Communist Party of China. It turns out later people went to the archives and realized it's actually July 23rd, but July 1st became the anniversary date of the date of the birth date of the Communist Party of China. So that's a history of its founding.
Yeah, I think that's a great breakdown, Carl. And I've been to China. Me and my girlfriend Ophelia, we visited China in 2019. And it was such a beautiful experience to see a country that's building socialism, that has lifted itself out of poverty, colonialism, imperialism. And I think so much is important to keep in mind the context of the century of humiliation, the 1800s, where the British, the French forced the Chinese people to import opium, basically drugging the whole population, keeping the population subsumed into their drugs and commodities and alcohol. China was able to lift itself up with the Chinese Communist Revolution, and also the KMT played a role as well earlier on. But the Mao and the role of the Chinese Communist Party in lifting the Chinese people out of that century of humiliation is such a beautiful experience. And I think that people should really travel to China to see for themselves what the reality is like, because it's so different from what mainstream media presents to us. Dust, as somebody who obviously produces really great content about socialism, you're in the US. I don't think, to my understanding, I don't think you've been to China. But what makes you, as somebody who lives in the US, be a friend and an ally of the Chinese people and the Communist Party of China?
That's a good question. Like, I've never been to China. I ain't from there, but I grew up, at one point my family was down a mile-long dirt road, 8 of us in a 2-bedroom trailer in North Carolina. And when I hear that a government has lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, that means something to me. That means something hard. And it got a lot to do with international solidarity. If they can lift the conditions of the Chinese people, where they are no longer being robbed by the same monopoly capitalists that we are being robbed from here, they are weakening our enemy here and making our fight better.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's something that's really inspiring. Like, my family is from Honduras, is a small Central American country, the second poorest in the Western Hemisphere, pillaged by imperialism, colonialism, and to see the Chinese people, who have also been subjugated to the same system, resist and fight back against the empire, something that is inspiring to myself and everyone from the global South who has a long history, because we all have connections to the North American and European imperialists in some way or another. And it's important to really build that international solidarity. I want to play a few clips from the celebration of the CPC 100th anniversary. This first one that I'm going to play is from President Xi Jinping saying China will not be bullied by foreigners during his anniversary speech. I'm going to read out the subtitles for those of you who are listening to this as a podcast.
不允许任何外来势力
One second. And basically what I liked about his speech is that he did not hold back. He was straight up. He was like, if you fuck with us, we're going to come at you. And in a peaceful and calm way, right? He wasn't trying to instigate violence, but he says, you can't mess around with the Chinese people the way the US wants to try to do that. The Chinese people will never allow any foreign forces to bully, oppress, or enslave us. Anyone who dares to do that will have their heads bashed. And everyone's clapping. Bloody against the Great Wall of Steel forged by over 1.4 billion Chinese people. Such a beautiful event. So there's this other clip I want to share with y'all. This is Xi Jinping saying we must continue to adapt Marxism to the Chinese context. I want to play this clip because there's so many people on the quote unquote left in the US who say that China is not socialist, that it's capitalist, that it's not revolutionary. And Xi Jinping is a brilliant Marxist-Leninist who studies Mao Zedong, who studies the Chinese history and applies it to Chinese characteristics, which is where the title Socialism with Chinese Characteristics comes from, is applying Marxism, adapting it to the conditions of your country. And this is part of his speech. We must continue to adapt Marxism to the Chinese context. Marxism is the fundamental guiding ideology upon which our party and country are founded. It is the very soul of our party and the banner under which it strives. The Communist Party of China upholds the basic tenets of Marxism and the principle of seeking truth from facts based on China's realities. We have developed keen insights into the trends of the day, seized the initiative in history, and made painstaking explorations. We have thus been able to keep adapting Marxism to the Chinese context and the needs of our times, and to guide the Chinese people in advancing our great social revolution. At the fundamental level, the capability of our party and the strengths of socialism with Chinese characteristics are attributable to the fact that Marxism works. With Chinese characteristics, oh, sorry, I read that. So that's another excerpt from his speech. And then I have just one more that I found to be really cool, where he's talking about strengthening Chinese unity, because we know that nowadays the imperialists want to balkanize China. They want to say that Taiwan is separate, that Tibet is separate, that Xinjiang is separate, even though they are China, and China is one and will not be divided. And Xi Jinping is reaffirming this in his speech, where he's talking about strengthening the great unity of the Chinese people, not based on racial supremacy or hierarchy, but on proletarian internationalism, on unity. And so this is part of his speech. The Patriotic United Front is an important means for the party to unite all the sons and daughters of the Chinese nation, both at home and abroad, behind the goal of national rejuvenation. On the journey ahead, we must ensure great unity and solidarity and balance commonality and diversity. We should strengthen theoretical and political guidance, build broad consensus, bring together the brightest minds, and expand common ground and the convergence of interests, so that all Chinese people, both at home and overseas, can focus their ingenuity and energy on the same goal and come together as a mighty force for the realizing national rejuvenation. So another great excerpt from President Xi Jinping's speech. By the way, how fresh is this guy's suit? I want a suit like that. It's very beautiful. And I had the chance to be in that beautiful Tiananmen Square in front of the People's Congress. Just such a beautiful experience. Maybe Carl, starting off with you, your reaction to the celebration, the 100th anniversary, and some of what Xi Jinping was saying.
Yeah, I mean, as you can tell by the thunderous applause, you know, what he says resonate with a lot of his audience, especially, you know, including people present and also people tuning in. I watch the live replay on many different channels, and I also see the chat boxes and people's comments. And people loved it. Most Chinese people loved it, but some English language media try to twist his words. Right? They really try to find a new angle to attack his speech. So they focus on the mistranslation of when he said, if people are going to choose to bully, antagonize, and China, they will find themselves hitting their heads on the wall of he said they will bash their head bloody on the wall of steel built by the Chinese people. Basically, that's what they said. But in other Western media, they translate it as, "Oh, we will crack their heads and make them bleed." Right? It totally turns. Like I don't think that's even a mistake. That's an intentional mistranslation. I mean, if the premise to the part about banning the head is, if you choose to bully China, I mean, the obvious choice is, don't do that. Don't bang your head against a wall, right? So you won't be bloody. But instead, they chose, oh my God, Xi Jinping used such graphic language, like such a tyrant, such a dictator. It's like, okay, just how about don't bully the Chinese people? It's very simple. Then that won't happen. You won't bang your head on the wall. I think it just shows that they have very little material. Like they can't find an actual point of attack. So now they're decide to be very petty, right? They're just basically nitpicking right now. What Xi Jinping said, it actually resonates with a lot of Chinese people, both in China and abroad, and I agree with that.
Most definitely, and I think another tactic that the imperialist media does is that a lot of times they don't even just play his audio or allow them to speak, because so much of the media that I've seen about China, Xi Jinping, and the Communist Party of China, they never even include a soundbite. They never even include any interviews or conversation. They're speaking completely for them, which is just ridiculous. And it reinforces this imperialist racist idea that the Chinese people don't have a voice of their own, that they don't have their own opinions, that they're just robots. And it's really disgusting to see that regurgitated in mainstream media. And I think that's one of the tactics that a lot of times we just don't even hear from the actual Chinese people themselves in defense of their revolution. Again, I had the opportunity, along with my girlfriend, to go to China in 2019. Everyone we spoke to was very proud of their revolution, their country, their party, and just being able to talk with people one-on-one directly was such a cool experience. By the way, shout out to everybody who's watching and listening: Big Teal, Salifu, Comrade Erica, Orlando, Comrade Tista, and everyone also agrees that President Xi Jinping's suit is mad fresh. I want to get a suit like that too. And it's about a beautiful message, right? Xi Jinping is talking about uplifting his people. He's talking about peace and development and unity. He's not talking about tearing down, destroying, but that's what mainstream media wants to portray him as. This evil guy just wants to pillage the world. And we'll get into some of those debates as well. But Comrade Dust, your reaction to President Xi Jinping's speech and in general, the 100th anniversary of the CPC.
First, I want to give a quick shout out to Red Bolshevik rapper Zhang Yu for helping to organize this stream. That's at not Zhang Yu on Twitter, for helping organize this. And man, I read that speech entirety. I actually put it in a text to speech app, and I listened to it while I was driving my truck down the road. And, I'm not Chinese, but when he got in there talking about how the Chinese people have made all these accomplishments and to be and how they have overcome over a century of humiliation, of extreme poverty, and now are the second largest economy in the world with modern infrastructure, I cried a little bit, be honest with you. That is that is beautiful. I'm not Chinese, but just that is amazing. He was telling all Chinese people, foreign and abroad, Taiwan, Hong Kong, also part of China, they should be proud of, you know, their heritage and what, you know, China was able to accomplish. And, you know, I'm looking down here at some of the neighborhoods I drive through every day, and you go through these little rural towns, and every building and main street's been closed up, and you only got 2 businesses in town. You got, you know, a gas station and a payday loan place that charges 300% interest. And rural America is crumbling. And then I see news about Xi goes out to a rural area and he sees the people need a hospital or the people need a school. And days later, a school or a hospital is up there. And it just gives me hope. It gives me hope, just as a citizen of the world, that a government of the people, a government action to fight for working families, as the Center for Political Innovation says, is possible.
It's definitely an inspiration. Going to China, I got to ride the high-speed train in Shanghai, the bullet train. Oh my God, it was so much fun and just such a dope experience to be able to see the future. Like going to China, I was in Beijing as well. The subway system was amazing. The best subway system I've ever been on. I'm from New York. I'm born and raised in New York. And people always like to brag about, oh, the New York subway system is so advanced. And first of all, it's dirty as hell. It's disgusting. It's crowded. It's always late. It's always something's breaking down in the middle. Dude, the Beijing subway system, it's like flawless. There's every 5 minutes a new train comes. It's so organized, so smooth. And that's only possible with central planning, with centrally constructed planning, 5-year plans, 10-year plans, with a communist party at the helm. And the thing that's interesting is that a lot of people in the US who call themselves leftists, they claim that China is not socialist or not building socialism because they do have a market sector, because after 1978, with reform and opening up, there were more private companies that came in. But what people don't understand, and I got to see this myself in China, is that the Communist Party of China really does oversee and is in control of a lot of these Western companies to make sure that they're not violating the rules, to make sure that they're sharing the technology. And that's actually one of the big compromises that companies have to make when they go to China. They can't just go there, produce products and bounce. They have to share that wealth and technology with Chinese companies so that they can learn that as well. And that's why China is quickly overcoming the US as the largest economy, if not already surpassing the US as the largest economy, because they've been able to understand that in order to defeat the enemy of capitalism and imperialism, you can't cut your way into growth, right? You can't just destroy, take down. You have to outbuild, outconstruct, outdo your competitor. And China understands that. They understand the long game so brilliantly because they have thousands of years of civilizational history. Stream I did a few months ago with Comrade Bay Area 415. Shout out to him. He just had to put out a good video about the Communist Party of China. One of the things that Xi Jinping doesn't get credit for is the fact that he understands and applies Marxism, this understanding of the dialectic, the negation of the negation, right? That something rises, falls, and then comes back to being even stronger. And we can apply that same model to the Chinese civilization, where before China, during the 13, 14, 1500s, had a big growing civilization. Obviously, because of colonialism, capitalism, imperialism, it was subjugated by the British, by the French, by the Western powers. But now it's rising back even stronger, even better, and can build socialism on the basis of development. And he understands the long game. And that's why the New Silk Road is based on the Old Silk Road, applying the conditions and the context of the Chinese people so brilliantly. And I think it's something that's very beautiful to see. I want to share with you guys a clip because so much of the coverage, I was talking with Dust right before the stream, that there's kind of two angles in which people attack the Communist Party of China. One of them is the traditional mainstream capitalist lies that China's the dictatorship, that it's propaganda, that if you don't believe the way they think, they're going to crack down. So I want to show you guys a clip from France 24, putting that frame of mind. And I want to get your response to it, because this is what we're seeing in a lot of mainstream media about the 100th anniversary.
With towering skyscrapers lining the riverbanks, Shanghai could be a shrine to capitalism. The metropolis is China's financial center and one of its economic engines. But it's also where the Chinese Communist Party was born 100 years ago. In this small house, where a dozen young idealists met in secret for their first Congress. Today, it's a museum, and for the ruling party's now 90 million members, one of the many holy sites of the People's Republic of China. People have come from all over the country to visit, often booking tickets several days in advance. The site was renovated and reopened in early June by Shanghai's party secretary Li Qiang. One of the main attractions is the first Chinese translations of Marx and Engels' Communist Manifesto. A few blocks away, where security allowed us to conduct interviews, visitors heaped praise on the party that has ruled China for the past 71 years.
They have led us into a new world. For me and for the country, the party has put us on a more prosperous path.
The Chinese Communist Party represents a renaissance for us in the world. It allows the Chinese people to be respected internationally.
The party represents my mother. Without her, I wouldn't be here. And without the party, I wouldn't be here, and we wouldn't have this wonderful life.
In the lead up to the anniversary, Beijing has been hard at work, pushing the party-approved version of history. Spearheading this effort is the Chinese Academy of History. It was created 2 years ago by Xi Jinping in an effort to counter negative views of the party's past. Movie theaters, for instance, have been ordered to screen and promote at least 2 propaganda movies every week. And new films like 1921 are being added to the canon of Chinese patriotic pictures. The action-packed historical drama tells the story of the foundation of the party. For those who saw this early screening, the movie has achieved its goals.
I feel very lucky to live in China today, and I have a great deal of gratitude to those revolutionary martyrs who sacrificed themselves.
But while boosting the official story, authorities are also censoring other narratives. A new hotline allows citizens to report any instance of historical nihilism, such as online comments that attack the party's ideology and leadership or defame national heroes or martyrs. Historians we reached out to in mainland China and Hong Kong either refused or didn't respond to our requests for an interview. So we turned to Antoine Bondaz, a China researcher based in Paris, to explain this concept of historical nihilism.
The objective for the Chinese political authorities is to impose their talking points. They want to impose their national story as well as their story of the party, whether it's at home or abroad. And so everything that doesn't fit in this narrative, anything that is beyond these talking points, will be considered to be historic revisionism, historic nihilism, and it will be punished as such.
But some are still willing to speak out. Wu Qiang is a political scientist who says he was dismissed from the prestigious Tsinghua University because of his work on Hong Kong's Occupy movement. Over time, he's seen how the party's history has changed according to who is in power. For instance, under the leadership of reformer Deng Xiaoping, the death and chaos of the Cultural Revolution were thoroughly examined and condemned. These criticisms have been erased.
The biggest change in this year's newly issued edition of the CCP's history is that it uses a nihilistic way to tell the story, especially for the part about the Cultural Revolution. It downplays the 10 years of disaster and turmoil brought by the Cultural Revolution in just 2 pages.
This particular revision of history suits Xi Jinping's tenure as leader. one defined by the lifting of term limits and a return to the kind of personality cult experienced during Mao Zedong's reign.
This is the new history of the party that people can learn now, and it's centered around the neo-Maoism of the past 9 years, which is referred to as Xi Jinping's thoughts on governance. This is the main narrative used during the party's 100th anniversary celebrations, and it therefore adds legitimacy to the present regime.
So basically, they have so much to take away from there. I'm sure you guys all have comments. Before I pass it on to Comrade Carl to react, the one thing I noticed, obviously, in the beginning, they try to start neutral. They show people who are supportive of the CPC. And then they have this random French dude who's in a fucking office in France who's like, well, if people don't follow exactly line by line the propaganda, they get punished. It's like, dude, like, who the fuck asked you? Why are you even interfering in the Chinese people's affairs? This random guy in France. The other thing that I found really interesting is the fact that the quote unquote Chinese dissident guy had a poster of Trotsky in his office. And obviously we know that there are some disagreements, right, historically with the Trotskyists. But Comrade Carl, your reaction to that clip?
Yeah, it's quite typical. I mean, one thing they do is delegitimize the opinions of Chinese people themselves. You know, they deprive Chinese people of their own agency. You present them as these gullible babes in the woods who are easily brainwashed by government propaganda. I mean, I talk about this on Twitter. I was born in 1976 in China, and I witnessed firsthand how China was, the living condition inside China was getting better and better and better. And also to address some of the issue that some so-called Western leftists talk about, China is really not communist or whatever. Deng Xiaoping has said, you know, socialism is not poverty. You know, if we fail to provide for our people, to provide our people a good living condition, then we have failed to build socialism, right? And in 1976, China was a very poor, still a very poor country. I have witnessed firsthand how the life of my family, which is a very ordinary family. My uncles, my aunties, they work in the factories, are factory workers. My grandpa, grandma were teachers, right? I seen firsthand how their life improved, and now I don't know what month you went back. You went to China in 2019. Because I went to China in 2019.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I went from April to July.
Wow.
And for me, I thought I was, you know, plugged into the China, you know, because I'm constantly involved in the Chinese social media. I'm constantly talking to people in China. But even for me, seeing is believing. Like when I actually was on the ground in China in 2019 and seeing all these changes in contrast of what my experience was when I was growing up in China in 1980s, or on my mini visit from like 2000 to 2010. I mean, it's really convincing when you are in China, seeing all these changes for yourself. So that's the thing that the Western media play on, is that play on people's ignorance. You know, because many people haven't been to China. Many people their only resource for China information is from these mainstream Western media channels, which are themselves propaganda, right? And but if you actually live there, as many Chinese people have, they know firsthand the improvement in their own lives. You know, like I don't need you know, to read a history book or read you know, the Guardian report or some research paper from some think tank in Paris to tell me about Chinese history. My family lived through it. I grew up with their oral history. I know about all about Cultural Revolution because my parents, my grandparents went through that. They talk about they talk about it all the time at home. Like in family gatherings. So and to address that, it's true that the probably Cultural Revolution is less talked about today than say in 1980s, because in 1980s it was still fresh in people's memory, right? It just happened, and people. So in 1980s, yes, there was a lot of introspection. There's a lot of articles talking about it. But for people who born in 1990s, people born in 2000, for the Chinese millennials and Chinese Zoomers, like Cultural Revolution is so far removed from their everyday existence. It could just be it just might as well be in the Jurassic Age. Like they grew up in a totally different China. My youngest cousin was born in mid 90s. For her, she grew up in a China that's has been growing. It's not poor. It's getting better and better. I mean, like for them, it's it's and also for the older people who experience a trauma, they prefer not to dwell on it, right? It's like yeah, it's great. We got it out of the way in 1980s. We did introspection. We examined it. But we don't have to live our trauma every day of our lives. And now it's 2021. I'm born in 1976, the year when Cultural Revolution ended, right? I'm going to be 45 this year. So it's been 45 years ago. I mean, think about it. That the fact that Western media have to go back 45 years to criticize the policies of Communist Party of China, right? Or 1989. That's another Tiananmen Square incident. That's another thing 1989. That happened 30 years ago. If you had to go to 30 years ago, 45 years ago to criticize the policy of the Communist Party of China, that means you don't got anything. Right. Right? You don't really have anything of substance. That's why you should keep on harking back. I don't want to do whataboutism, but look at what U.S. has done in the last 40, 30 years. Committing atrocity all over the globe. Right, but no, let's not focus on the Iraq War. Let the bygones. Let's rehabilitate George W. Bush. I mean, that's mind-boggling. They have like obituaries singing praise of Donald Rumsfeld. It's like this is a war criminal. This is outrageous. And in the meantime, they wanted you to remember, Cultural Revolution. Why is China not talking about Cultural Revolution? Why is China not talking about Tiananmen? Right, it's like. Freaking Donald Rumsfeld, you let him pass away in peace in his bed. That's a crime. That's a crime against humanity. And then you sing his praise in your newspapers. What kind of propaganda is that? I mean, like that. So sorry for ranting, but I just have to get that off my chest. Yeah,
it's a great point, man. And it's just like it's the irony, right? Because it's like the U.S. is like, oh, let's overcome. We're past that. We're post-racial. We're all Americans. We're all together. Let's overcome that. But when it's China, it's like, oh, remember the Cultural Revolution? Remember this famine that happened X year? And it's like the Chinese people understand that. Like that's the ironic part is that the first people to tell you that there were problems in China are the Chinese people, are Xi Jinping, the Communist Party of China. I finished reading The Governance of China last year, and it's a beautiful copy. I got it in China, actually, when I was there. And a lot of it is laying out some of the problems. He's like, look, yeah, during the Cultural Revolution period, we had some ultra-leftism. We had, that was a problem. We had some issues managing the economy at certain points. We're working to build it. And that's the ironic part is a lot of Western leftists come at it. They're like, but what about this? What about that? It's like, yeah, they're working on it. It takes time. And it's just the arrogance of so many Western leftists. And shout out to Deborah Rodriguez, by the way. She said, I could criticize US from shit they did yesterday. Yeah, that's exactly right. Even shit they're doing today, especially this weekend, quote unquote, 4th of July weekend. There's so much crap that the U.S. has, so many skeletons in its closet, literally. But Comrade Dust, your reaction to some of that propaganda from mainstream media about China?
Yeah. Sorry, my internet went off for a second. It's rural internet. We need some. We need
Chinese high-speed internet.
Yeah, Chinese high-speed internet out here. I think that movie looked lit. That 1921.
It does.
Movie.
It does. I'm gonna watch it after this. Actually,
I gotta watch it. I mean, there was a lot being said. It was lies. I thought it was interesting that they went to their so-called the Chinese defector. The first thing they show is a picture of Trotsky in the background, and,
right.
and they pan over to him. I'm like,
of course.
And they got these. They show the only videos they can find of Chinese people talking about their government and talking about their lives is all positive, but then they have to put this and that and twist it and frame you up. And did they have that weird music playing in the background?
Not this time, but they usually do. It's like, yeah, they usually do that with China though.
And even that stuff like that's a French media. If turn on the Rush Limbaugh channel.
Oh my god!
And you don't even get none of that. It's communist China, evil taking over the world.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Absolutely disgusting. If the people listening to the Rush Limbaugh channel, living in trailers and going to work and not getting paid straight and seeing our schools fall down, and they listen to the Chinese people of what they've gone through and how their impressions can prove, I think they'd be scared of that.
Most definitely. And I also wanted to mention to Comrade Carl that we were actually in China around the same time, because I was actually there on May Day 2019. So we were probably I was in Beijing. I went to Xinganshan. I probably butchered it, unfortunately. Jingganshan in southern China, where the Chinese Red Army was founded. And it was so beautiful. I don't know if you were in Beijing or in that area around that time, 2019, April to May.
I was near Shanghai already. I traveled through across southern China. I went to Yunnan on the near border with Myanmar to visit my friend for the water festival, which is the same holiday as Songkran in Thailand, which celebrates the arrival of rainy dry season. So this was in April 13th, and after that I went back to my hometown in Chongqing, and then I took the slow train. I took the green train from Kunming in Yunnan all the way across southern China to near Hangzhou, near Shanghai, where my dad's families are. So I spent the time during the May holiday with my dad near his family. But that's great. You went to Jingganshan. I haven't been to Jingganshan.
It's beautiful. I wanted to move there. I was telling my girlfriend, I was like, yo, we should retire here. It's beautiful. They have the museum. We went to the mountain side where they retreated, because it was I think it was the beginning of the Long March where they started there. And it was just beautiful. The most beautiful thing was seeing the tourism, because there's red tourism growing in China, and seeing grandparents being in China and speaking with people who are like millennial Zoomers, right? Who are engineers and scientists and doctors and have smartphones, Chinese smartphones, and then their grandparents who are literally peasants and farmers who were dying before the revolution. Just seeing how short of a time span, because if you look at the history of not only Chinese civilization, but human civilization as a whole, 40, 50, 60 years is nothing. That's like the blink of an eye. So to get to a point where you have one grandparent who couldn't read or write, who was farming, who was dying in famines in capitalist China, to go to their grandkids going to space, being engineers. I mean, to think about that is something so beautiful. But moving forward, I want to play a clip. There's this YouTuber, maybe you guys have heard of him before. He's kind of well known. He calls himself leftist. I do not think he's leftist at all. Shout out to my friend Caleb Maupin, by the way. He just came out with the book, BreadTube Serves Imperialism. Everybody, please check out that book. It's on Amazon. He's one of the people that's talked about in this book. But there's this guy on the internet called Vash, and I want to play a clip where he slanders the Communist Party of China, and he has just such a pessimistic, synthetic left viewpoint of what socialism is. So I want to play this clip and get you guys' reaction.
There's no country on this planet that is socialist.
I said something different. Sorry, my bad.
There's no country on this planet that's socialist. There are countries that work towards it. There are parties that are socialist. But to say, like, China is a communist country. Like,
yeah, but the country of Cuba is the party. It's a unitary Marxist-Leninist state. The country is the state.
Then it's not properly democratic if it's a unitarian single-party state.
Yeah, sure, they're not democratic.
You need democracy to have socialism.
Organization and political parties, but I think Cuba could be better. I think Cuba could introduce a multi-party system.
You can't call something socialist if it's not socialist. Like, wait, does a thing become communist merely? Wait, stop. Stop.
When someone is ideologically...
Wait, geez, hold on. Wait, can you hear me? Okay, wait, hold on. I had to hold you up there for a second, okay? Because we need to frame this discussion, okay? From your definition, any party that calls itself communist becomes a communist party.
No, I don't think so. I only think...
How is China communist? Describe to me what communism is, and then tell me how China is that.
I think if China is... First of all, when we say China, what we're speaking about, are we talking about like the Chinese Communist Party? Are we talking about the state?
The country of China, which is ruled by a single party called the Chinese Communist Party.
Well, China's more totalitarian. It's more that they have like a council committee who has totalitarian rule over sort of the rest of the government.
How are they communist?
You can have in Cuba, you can have a recall. So I would say Cuba's a dictatorship of the proletariat. I wouldn't say China's a dictatorship of the proletariat.
How is China communist? Are you, hey, mate? How is China communist? You kind of skipped by the actual question there.
I don't think China is communist.
Didn't you just say that earlier?
I don't think we can. No, I said I don't think China is communist. I said I don't think China is a communist country. I said I don't know if Vietnam is. I don't know how their political.
Do you know? Can you define communism for me? Can you define communism?
It's a moneyless, classless, stateless society.
Okay, is Vietnam that?
No, but
okay, then there's that.
We need to distinguish between when a country's economy materially is socialist and when a party or an organization or a person is ideologically socialist.
How do you think Marx, who coined material dialectic, would feel about you saying that a party and a country are communist because they adopt the aesthetics rather than because their economic and political material reality are communist? How do you think he would feel about you saying that?
I think Marx, as a philosopher who made a distinction between material and ideological imperatives.
Which do you think he cared about with regards to communism?
There's a difference between an ideological communist and some society which has a materially communist economy.
So the best state that you could take then is the idea that none of these countries are communist, but that they're led by communist leadership.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say a country's good because it's led by communist leadership by any means. Like, China's not a good country because its dictatorship is communist ideologically.
Well, none of them are communist. None of these countries are communist.
I don't know. I think I would say that we can't really make the distinction of whether or not the people in China's totalitarian committee are ideologically communist.
It doesn't matter whether they're ideologically communist. The party doesn't enforce communist rule.
It does when we're defining whether or not someone or something is communist.
No, we're defining whether the state is communist or the party is communist, and that can only be defined by what they do, not by inferring their private beliefs in the comfort of their home.
In that case, no one in the world is a communist.
No, people can be communist. The Chinese Communist Party is not communist because it doesn't do communism with its party apparatus.
What makes a person a communist then?
Believing in communism. But we're not talking about people.
So you can't distinguish whether...
So that's just part of it. There's so much more of this nonsense that this idiot Vosh is talking about. But I play this. Why do I play this? Because this is the level of political discourse in the Western left about China. And it's so disgusting. And this is the mainstream left talking point about China, that it's horrible, that it's not socialist, it's not building communism, it's not building socialism. Comrade Carl, your reaction to that?
Well, I know why you play that clip, because this is so typical. I mean, this is so typical of the quote unquote Western left. I mean, they will outright attack any country that where the socialist or the communist party took power, and say, oh no, that's not communism, that's not socialism, we can't do that. And they live in the imperial core, right, whereas the capitalism is rampant. So what are they doing essentially? They are supporting the status quo, right? I mean, they're sitting in their basement bitching about life, and then they attack anybody who actually succeeded in seizing power, trying to change the status quo, right? I mean, I have no respect for these people. There's
Neither
zero.
do I.
Zero.
Yeah,
Zero.
it's really disgusting to see that, and just the arrogance. I mean, it's just like acting like they know about China, acting like they know what the Chinese people have been through with colonialism, with imperialism, overcoming Japanese imperialism, overcoming Western sanctions and destabilization. And it's just really disgusting. But I wanted to play that because literally that's where discourse is on the quote unquote Western left when it comes to China. And there's so many cowards out there too. Like, that's my biggest thing. Like, there are people who even people who call themselves Marxist Leninists who still talk shit about China, who still want to hate on China. And it's like, dude, why are you trying to gain brownie points from people like that who don't care? And it's just really disgusting. But Comrade Dust, I don't know your reaction to that.
That was very sad.
Yeah,
to sit there and try to watch. I mean, Vosh is like, they're not democratic, they're not this or that, and they don't understand, you know, what it means, what the constant sabotage that is done against China, that is done against other countries and Venezuela. This is typical. I think democratic rights and freedoms to move about have a lot to do with stability in that country. So of course, in the imperialist core, where we have, you know, the strongest monopoly capitalist bankers and what have you, and they have a little bit of kick down to the labor aristocracy, they're going to live a little bit more of freedom of movement. But when you have a country that's, you know, went from, you know, subsistence agriculture and then to a modern society in that short amount of time, they don't have those resources to let all this, you know, to let all this craziness go on. And then they act like it's this Eurocentrism. It's Eurocentrism. It's racism. It's, you know, the old idea of the Asian despot. The same people that call me hillbilly and look on me because the way I talk are the same people who look down on the Chinese people. And, you know, it's absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, it's a lot of these academic liberal types who are backed by mainstream media, backed by these NGO industrial complex organizations that love bashing China. And it's really disgusting to see that. Comrade Erica had a good point. She said, people who have never tasted a revolution have so much to say. Well said. I mean, this guy, you know, he is just like talking out of his ass about China and being horrible. And he's somebody who will never go through what life was like for those Chinese people that I met who were living in capitalist China, who were oppressed, who were being bombed by the Japanese imperialists. And they're proud of their country, their revolution. And it just is really disgusting to see people like him write it off. You know, the largest communist party in the world that has seen 100 years, the highs and the lows, the strategic innovation of the CPC is something that's really inspiring to see, because they've been able, I think, compared to a lot of other communist parties, one of the most brilliant things about the CPC is its ability to adapt and change based on the changing circumstances. Because as Lenin said, the leader of the Russian Revolution, if the circumstances, if the conditions change in 24 hours, your tactics have to change in 12 hours. You have to be ahead of the game. You have to come up with new ways. And that's exactly why in 1978, 1979, with reform and opening up, when they saw how the U.S. was able to drag the Soviet Union into a quote unquote war in Afghanistan, the U.S. imperialists switched up their strategy. So the Chinese Communist Party had to do the same. They're like, look, we can't be going abroad funding revolutions. We got to come back home, re-strategize, reorganize, and that's why they're still around. So I have mad props for the CPC for that. But Comrade Carl, I mean, we have about 10 minutes. First of all, it's dope talking with both of you comrades about China and the 100th anniversary. In the 10 minutes that we have left, I just wanted to ask you guys, like, starting off with Comrade Carl, what's your response to leftists who claim there's this term that's used by a lot of ultra leftists, Chinese imperialism, the Chinese debt trap? What is your response to people who promote those talking points?
These guys are literally consuming and regurgitating propaganda from corporate pieces like Washington Post, which is owned by Jeff Bezos,
right?
or such place. Like what is imperialism, right? Is China sending gunboats to Africa for putting a gun to African leaders' head, forcing them to sign an unequal treaty, right? No, as far as I know, all the agreement that was bilateral agreement that signed between China and the global South nations, they were conducted on an equal basis. The government, the people, the countries in Africa, in Southeast Asia, these countries, they have sovereignty, right? That's like they didn't have that during the Western colonialism when the British, the French, the Germans, they literally. Sorry, that's my dogs fighting.
Even your dogs are upset too. They're like, those damn Western leftists.
The imperialist running dogs.
Right. Literally.
So they were sending their military all over the globe, forcing people to sell their resources and sell their labor at gunpoint, right? And right now, with all the agreement China is signing, they're with sovereign countries. You can make an argument whether those countries are representative of their people, but China respects their sovereignty. That's not imperialism. People didn't enter into agreement with China to borrow loans because the Chinese government is forcing them to. They have a choice, right? I mean, like, why did they not go to IMF or World Bank, right? I mean, what is the other alternative? Right? I mean, like really, you want them to go to IMF and World Bank and see what happened after all these years? And if anything, the China provide alternative. It's another option. Now the other nations, so in the global South, they can say, okay, who can offer me the best deal? The Western government or China? And there's a reason people go to China, because they offer these loans without all these strings attached with the when it comes with the Western loans, when IMF asks you to drastically cut your government spending, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, yeah, I think it's kind of disgusting. All these people in Europe, in US, accuse China of imperialism. Like, really? Like, have you looked into the mirror lately? That is my response.
No, well said, man. And another thing that's important to mention is, like, even within the left, there are people who will defend Cuba, will defend Venezuela, or other countries, right? And it's like their ability to construct socialism. I obviously am in solidarity with like Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Bolivia under Evo Morales, and now under Luis Arce, the new president. And hopefully Peru as well, if Pedro Castillo is able to stay. Their ability to build socialism in the global South countries, especially Latin America, is based on trade and cooperation with China. If you go to Venezuela, they have a lot of bilateral deals in terms of trading food and petroleum and different things like that. With Cuba as well, during the 90s, during the special period when the Soviet Union was overthrown and destabilized by the Western imperialists, China stepped in and helped Cuba with a lot of deals. And it was because of China that Cuba was able to continue to stay afloat along with other countries as well. Nicaragua, same thing. Because of Chinese solidarity and cooperation, they've been able to develop the economy. I was just in Nicaragua a few months ago, and they have been cooperating a lot with China in terms of infrastructure. So in terms of, and even Bolivia as well, Bolivia with Evo Morales, the 13 years that he was president, so many advancements, Bolivia being one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere, because of cooperation with China, they were able to lift so many people out of poverty in Bolivia and become the fastest growing economy in South America in 2019. So much of that. And I think it's just like, it's really comes down to cowardice, because people in the Western left, it's not trendy to defend China. It's not trendy to be in solidarity with the CPC, because it's been painted in mainstream media as imperialist, as, you know, and that falls in line with the mainstream talking points. And so that's why I'm glad, you know, to be able to talk with you, Comrade, about that. But Comrade Dust, oh yeah, Carl, what's up, Carl?
I just have one last point to point out. You know, all these Western leftists say they're in solidarity with Cuba, with Venezuela, right, with Bolivia, but then they're anti-China. Whereas all the leaders of Cuba, of Venezuela, Bolivia, they all say they are in solidarity with China, right? There's a big disconnect. I mean, people. Huge. I think one of the reasons is there is a degree of familiarity with Latin America because it's closer to home, and there's a lot of ignorance about China. Like I say, most of their knowledge is received wisdom from all these corporate propaganda about China. So they really don't have, when they're speaking about China, they're just regurgitating the propaganda that's being ingested. I mean, I encourage those people to like learn from, you know, to make some Chinese friends, maybe like talk to people from China, go to China, see for yourself, you know, seeing is believing.
Oh, indeed. And going to China myself and seeing the progress and the amazing development and construction was so, I mean, even before that, I mean, I went to China, obviously I support the Chinese Revolution, but going there was just like, wow, it's next level. You see what socialism looks like based on construction, abundance, infrastructure. And it's just so beautiful to see that. And even Fidel Castro, one of my favorite revolutionaries, I actually got a tattoo of Fidel right here. I don't know if y'all can see this. Hold on. Let me move my hair. Got the Fidel Castro tattoo. Before he died, he said that Xi Jinping is one of the most advanced communist leaders of our time. And that's a big endorsement. We're talking about Fidel Castro, the leader of the Cuban Revolution, El Comandante himself being like, yo, Xi Jinping, that's the dude to look out for in 2021, because Xi Jinping is a genuine Marxist, a revolutionary. He's at the forefront and he knows what he's doing. And so that's why, like exactly like you said, Comrade, like the leaders of Venezuela, of Cuba, of Nicaragua, they're all like studying the Chinese economic model. Obviously, they're not copying and pasting it. They're adjusting it to the natural conditions of Latin America and other countries. But they have a lot of reverence and respect. And it's just so sad, the cowardice of people to not defend China. But Comrade Dust, your reaction to people who claim, you know, China is imperialist, that they're putting a debt trap around the world, your response to those people?
I just want to add to the conversation here. I think you're absolutely right. Pointing out the hypocrisy of Western leftists when they say they love Evo Morales, but they hate the Chinese Communist Party. I have a tweet translated into English from Spanish from Evo Morales that I can read. We salute the brother people of China and its leader Xi Jinping on the 100th year founding of the Chinese Communist Party, which led the construction of a global economic power, defeating imperialism, feudalism, and capitalism. That is Evo Morales himself on Twitter. Now, what I got to tell these you know Western leftists that want to attack the people of China and attack the Chinese people's revolution is go back to your Trotskyite book club and your pristine university and go buy some more books from the bishops of imperialism, because you don't know what imperialism is. And down here, I read Stalin, The Foundations of Leninism, and Lenin, Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism. And I can explain in clear working class language what imperialism is and what imperialism is not. Imperialism is monopoly capitalism. It is a group of banking cartels that control the economy for their own profits. Now, is China a country where the government is completely run for the benefit of a few banking cartels? No. The banking system is nationalized in China. The Communist Party has supremacy over the market sector. They set goals. They meet those goals. They raise people out of poverty, and they are pushing towards socialism.
Well said, Comrade Dust. I couldn't have said it better myself. It's been really dope talking to both of you comrades. Again, we spoke with Comrade Carl. Am I pronouncing your last name correctly, Comrade Carl Ja?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah,
Comrade Carl, definitely got to have you back on, man. A pleasure speaking with you. Carl is the host of the Silk and Steel podcast, which focuses on China and surrounding regions, history, culture, and politics. The link to his channel is in the description. Please subscribe to his channel. He has some really great content. The Silk and Steel podcast is really dope. And also Comrade Dust, who is a Marxist-Leninist trucker, host of Anti-Imperialist America and Working Class Revolt. Also a member of the Center for Political Innovation, CPI. Shout out to CPI. Shout out to our homie, our friend, Caleb Maupin. Shout out to everybody watching and listening, to Comrade Erica, Big Teal, Deborah Rodriguez, to everybody who's on. Comrades, it was really dope talking with you guys. And congratulations to the Chinese people, the Communist Party, 100 years of success. And I hope it's another 100 years. Peace out, comrades. Take care, guys.
Peace out.
Peace out.